Hi everyone, I'm Ed Verdel with the VIP team at Compass, and I'm very excited for today's conversation with my good friend, past client, and co-team lead, Max Vishnev. So Max has a very interesting story, which I think is going to be relatable to a lot of people, and therefore we thought it was a good idea to sit down and have this interview. Max is an immigrant who moved to Brooklyn and went to school in the city, ended up moving back to Brooklyn from Manhattan, and then found himself in New Jersey and working in the field of real estate. Along the way, he also became a real estate investor, and today we're going to talk about his journey and all the lessons along the way. So Max, thanks for agreeing to have this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us about your background. You immigrated here at what age?
I was 10 and a half actually.
Okay, got it. And so you moved to Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you grew up, spent most of your childhood?
Yeah. So we immigrated to Brooklyn from Kiev, from Ukraine,
Okay.
and ended up going to public school in Brooklyn all the way through high school,
Yep.
and then continued living in South Brooklyn. Went to college in the city and did the whole commuter thing.
Yep.
Got internships and corporate jobs along the way, so made some money while in college and ended up on Wall Street actually. Ended up at Morgan Stanley, worked there for 6 years. And that was great for a while. Ended up on a trading desk, and then the financial crisis hits, Lehman Brothers collapses, and things start heading in the opposite direction, and things weren't fun anymore. And I realized it just wasn't a good fit for me, so I made plans to get out, essentially. Get out.
And when you say get out, you really got out. I mean, you went abroad, right?
I really got out. Yeah, I had this studio apartment on the Upper West Side near Zabar's on Broadway, and lived there for 2.5 years. And it was easy commute to Times Square, where Morgan Stanley headquarters was. But after the financial crisis, I was like, this is not for me. I need to get out. And the exit plan was to go study abroad. And I ended up getting into a school in Barcelona. And it was a great decision.
That sounds very exciting. And how old were you at that time? Do you remember?
Late 20s.
Late 20s.
Yeah.
Which is a fun time in your life. So you were in Barcelona there. And did you work there? What did you do when you were there?
No, so the goal was to finish my MBA, which I had started at NYU.
Yeah.
In Manhattan, Lower Manhattan. So I was doing it part-time. And then one of the reasons I decided to quit my job and leave Morgan Stanley was because post-financial crisis, they had a generous policy beforehand, which was full reimbursement if you go part-time and stay with us. And then after the financial crisis, they capped it at like $10,000 a year, which is nothing for NYU grad school.
Sure.
So that left, and they didn't grandfather any of us in, which left a bad taste in my mouth. And I was like, clearly they don't really care about us as individuals. It's all about the cost savings. This is not the company or the industry that I want to be in for the long run. So that was for me the straw that broke the camel's back. And I was like, I got to get out. Yeah. So so left my apartment. I remember actually very clearly, my lease ended July 31st.
Okay.
I moved out of my apartment, and August 1st, I was on a flight from JFK to Heathrow.
Wow.
To backpack for a month in Europe and then spend my semester in Barcelona. So, and then I came back with an MBA. But at that point, I was in my late 20s, and I didn't really know what to do with that MBA because I didn't want to go back to Wall Street. So it was a
So what'd you end up doing?
Well, I kind of caught the travel bug while in Europe, and decided, why don't I pursue something travel related? Meeting people, learning about places, studying history and architecture, and discovering off the beaten path spots for food and coffee and music. But why not do it in my own city? So I decided to design. First, it was a travel app idea for New York, and then that evolved through a lot of iteration, evolved into an actual walking tour concept. So I launched with no experience, no previous background in it. Launched a tour company that I built literally from the ground up, and that basically became my second career.
Now, how long did that take you to launch, that period?
So it was about a year from concept to pivoting away from the app into designing and launching like a walking tour business with actual live tours that people could sign up for. So it took about a year. It was a very difficult year because it was my first time in my life being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And it was very scary. Obviously, I was investing my money and my time and all my energy, and there was no guarantee whatsoever of success.
Right, of course.
And in fact, there were moments where I was like, you know what? Maybe this was a bad decision. Maybe I should just go back to corporate. I have this MBA. So there were moments where I was pretty close to throwing in the towel. So luckily I didn't. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And we had met at some point when you still had this company.
Yeah.
And you had done this for how long? For
So
that career?
by the time we met, we were introduced by a mutual friend.
Sure, yeah.
By the time we met, I think this was 2019. Yeah, 2019. And I was like a good 10 years, no, like 8 years into it. 8 years into having my own tour business.
Yeah, and in discussions with you, I had noticed that you were starting to kind of burn out in that field.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I hadn't had the idea yet to get into real estate and become a real estate licensed agent, but there was already like things brewing in my head because I'd been doing it for a long time, right? Nearly a decade, and it was physically and mentally draining at that point, and I just needed a change, and I needed a new challenge, and it was perfect time for yet another career change.
Yeah.
And then that coincided with my wife and I completely outgrowing our one-bedroom rental in Brooklyn, like by Prospect Park, where we had been living for 8 years. And 2 kids later, we're like, this is like, we're bursting at the seams here. We need to get out of here. But I had this mind for a long time, a mindset of, I would never leave New York. Why would I leave New York?
Which a lot of people do, of course.
Yeah. Why would I go to Jersey? No way. I had this negative perception and kind of certain stereotypes in my head about moving to Jersey, and I was very set on staying in that part of Brooklyn.
Right.
And so it took a big mental switch for me before we even met, for me to like even consider buying something in Jersey.
Was it something specific that made that mental switch? Were you listening to somebody or something that made you really consider this option?
I think it was just the one bedroom rental. It was in an older, typical like pre-war building in Brooklyn, and even though the location was great, the unit itself, you could see like there was peeling paint and cracked tiles from just, it wasn't ours, right? So like, why would I spend money renovating something that's not mine? The management company didn't care, and the one bedroom, the square footage was not changing, right? But meanwhile, like our kids were growing, and we had no room for anything. And I remember like having coffee one morning in the kitchen, looking out at Prospect Park, thinking like, this is not sustainable. We've done this long enough, much longer than we probably anticipated, and much longer than most people in our family and circle of friends thought we would stay there. And it's like, it's time. This is it. It's time to move on. Our rents are going up. The apartment is not getting any bigger, and like, it's time for a change. The problem was this: in our area, Brooklyn was already so gentrified by then that there was nothing reasonably affordable to buy in our area.
That's what I was going to ask you. Did you consider that area?
We looked around, but the prices were just crazy.
Okay,
I mean, relatively speaking.
So it was more for a value play.
It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense to buy there. So at one point, I realized, all right, we have to look elsewhere. And neither my wife nor I wanted to go east, which is towards Long Island. And we're like, all right, what's the other realistic option? You got to look west, right, across the river. So we started looking in Jersey. We wanted to be close to the city. And so we started to look in Hudson County, and that's when we were introduced, and we zeroed in on Dale at that time.
Now, before that, you had actually purchased another property, right? So,
that's true.
So
true.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so our journey kind of was a little bit weird, not what you would expect, right? Like renting your primary residence. Our first purchase was actually not even a primary residence. It was like a second home / short-term rental investment property in the Catskills. Completely accidental. My wife was visiting her dad up there near a town called Phoenicia, and she saw a for sale sign in front of this beautiful log house on a beautiful piece of land. And it was like love at first sight for her. And she called me. She's like, "We're buying a log house." I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Yeah, there's a log house for sale down the road from my dad, and I want to buy it." I was like, "Okay."
So when was this?
2018. So it'll be 6 years later this year.
Okay.
And I was like, I didn't see it coming, but we trust each other a lot, and we have a very strong relationship. And I was like, all right, cool, let's buy it. Yeah, sure, let's buy it.
So you hadn't even seen it yet?
I hadn't even seen it yet. I was like, all right, let's figure it out. And I was not particularly involved with that purchase because I was running my tour business, and we had 2 kids, so there was just a lot of juggling. So she was kind of the primary individual on that one. And talk about learning quickly. That was, oh my God, that first year, We were still renting in Brooklyn, but we learned so much just from owning a piece of real estate.
Yeah.
And so much from launching like it as a short-term rental listing. And all the mistakes we made, the house was built in the mid-70s, well, septic, log house construction. There was an old hot tub in the back. Talk about learning through experience. The first year was rough, but we came out smarter and I think better prepared for what ended up happening, which is us buying a primary residence in Jersey.
Right.
Which is what you helped us buy.
And Max's first purchase in Jersey was a 2-family house. And so what led to that decision versus buying a single family, which a lot of people opt to do?
Right. So my wife and I actually, we got into real estate from the investing point of view. It was actually her initiative. She started listening to Bigger Pockets podcast that some of our listeners might know. And then she bought some of the books that they've published and she shared some with me. And then I got into it. I caught the bug and started consuming everything I could about real estate investing. So we thought, all right, if we're going to get out of the rental cycle or trap in New York and we're going to go over to Jersey, why not approach it not just from hey, we need a primary residence, we need a bigger place to raise our family, but why not look at it from an investing point of view as well? And what's the best way to do that? You buy a multifamily so you can live in one and rent out the other.
Sure.
So we said, all right, if we're going to buy in Jersey, we're not going to buy a single family now. Let's target a 2-family that we can afford and live in one, rent the other. So that was kind of the goal. That's why we decided to target a 2-family in Bayonne.
So you mentioned about buying this 2-family with the investor mindset, right? A lot of people talk about the term house hack, right? That's a very common term that's going around right now. Is that something that you had heard of at the time?
Yeah.
And I know that you have a lot of experience with this with clients, so tell us a little bit about house hacking and the mindset behind it.
Yeah, so that was a term that was thrown around a lot on the Bigger Pockets podcast and in some of the books we were reading. And basically, in simple terms, it's where you buy a property where you can rent a portion of it out to generate rental income to offset some of your expenses. I mean, in some extreme cases, you can technically cover all of your expenses, but that's extremely rare, especially in our market. You would probably have to get like a 3 or 4 unit and
rent out bedrooms perhaps in your
maybe
unit.
even maybe even like the rent out certain rooms. Right. Yeah, true.
So I know because you've moved on from this property, but can you go into the numbers a little bit? What was your overall mortgage payment there, and then what were you collecting in rent? What was your payment that you were left with?
Sure. So let me try to remember. We bought it in 2019. Thanks to you, we were able to close on it. Went very smoothly.
Yeah.
I think we negotiated something to replace the roof after purchase, and
well, to be fair, we had another property that we were.
Oh yes, should I go into that?
Why not?
Okay. Yeah, you're right. I totally forgot about that, and I think this will resonate with some people that have had deals fall through.
Sure. Yeah.
In my case, it was post-inspection. So we actually ended up getting under contract on 43rd Street, and it was a semi-attached 2-family.
Right.
And it was renovated, but it was a weird layout where like the kitchen, and I think one of the kitchen and one of the bathrooms was in the basement, the finished basement.
Can't say I remember perfectly.
Yeah,
but
I remember. So the kitchen was in the basement, like the dining room was in the basement, but we're like, we can make it work. And we got under contract, but then we did the inspection, and the inspection revealed that there's an oil tank in the driveway, like underneath the driveway, and it also revealed some moisture issues in the finished basement. Not a big surprise, considering a lot of Bayonne houses are 100 years old. So the sellers refused to take out the oil tank, and the deal ended up falling through. And the day it fell through, this other house hit the market on East 44th, and we ended up jumping on it.
Yep.
And it was kind of a great situation where it was longtime sellers moving to South Jersey, I believe, and they were motivated, we were motivated, so it kind of worked out, and we ended up closing. It was like $490,000 contract price plus a small credit post-inspection. So I think we closed like $485,000. This is like in the days of 3% mortgages. So I think our mortgage was exactly 3%.
Yeah.
And we put down very little. I think we put down, I want to say like 10%, if I'm not mistaken. And it was great. Our monthly payment, I believe, was like low 3s all in with taxes and insurance, maybe like $3,300. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but something like that. And I was able to get tenants well, I should probably backtrack because I got licensed around the same time. So,
Yes.
But I was able to get tenants for the first unit, which was the smaller unit, for 1,400. It was like a 1-bedroom. And we were painting and hustling. The day before their lease started, I was painting their unit and like rolling the ceilings at midnight. It was crazy.
With your kids, I think, right?
Kids helped out a little bit, but it was crazy. It was a very hectic time for us. But we were extremely proud because we went from basically within a few months. I went from like having the epiphany in the kitchen, drinking my coffee, looking at Prospect Park, saying like we can't stay in this 1-bedroom anymore, to literally I think 4 months later, closing on our first Jersey property and our first multifamily house hack. And it was great. And the tenants are actually still there, even though we don't own the property anymore. Same tenants.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Great tenants.
Great.
And that property worked out really well for us. It was a great launching pad for us in Jersey and a great place to live for 3 years. And
to live and investment-wise, right?
Investment and to live, yeah.
And what amazed...
I didn't. I'm sorry, I had to interrupt. I didn't answer the second part of your question. So our net was roughly like 2,000 all in.
Sure.
Like after subtracting rental income,
Yep.
which was lower.
I was just about to ask.
A few $100s lower than we were paying for the 1-bedroom with the cracked tiles and the peeling paint in Brooklyn.
Where you have no appreciation.
Where I had no upside,
right?
No upside at all.
Right. And what amazed me the most about the whole process is you went from somebody who never lifted a hammer, it sounded like in your life as a renter before, to essentially a full-fledged contractor by the end of this investment.
Well,
because you did a lot of work throughout.
We did do a lot of work.
So talk about that a little bit. Like what
sure,
did you end up doing?
I would never call myself a full-fledged contractor, far from it. But you're right. I basically had no skills whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I think I was intimidated by any kind of work. And I generally like shied away from it. Sometimes I had a hard time like putting an IKEA piece of furniture together properly.
Right.
And like I remember being very impressed in Brooklyn when my wife replaced the toilet seat. I was like, wow, how did you do that? She's like, you just follow the instructions. You unscrew from the bottom, you take it off. I was like, wow. And then in Bayonne, because we wanted to save money and also gain experience doing a lot of our own work, I ended up learning how to paint. And then we ended up deciding to finish the basement. So I ended up literally, like, thanks to YouTube videos, I learned how to frame, how to put up sheetrock, how to tape and spackle, put down LVP flooring. We even did like some stucco work on some of the masonry walls. Crazy. I did exterior, like waterproofing, things that I built wooden planters for my wife because she wanted to have like an urban garden. So it was incredible because it showed me that we're all capable of learning new things and acquiring new skills if we're simply open to the possibility of learning and actually like putting in the time, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So I learned a lot. I can now do a lot, and there's certain things I don't want to do again. But at least now when it helps me as a real estate agent as well as an investor too, because from doing stuff, having done stuff, like I can now look at a property and be like that looks off. This wasn't done right. That looks like a shoddy job.
And you might have a solution for it because you've done some of that stuff.
Or like
yourself.
that's a simple fix.
Yeah.
Or I could look at a property and say, wow, that's beautiful. They did a great job.
Yeah.
So that helped a lot. And I'm still learning. Like I'm still learning. I feel like every DIY project is an opportunity. Like at our current residence, I repainted our porch last year, and I had never done a porch project before, and it was cool. It was fun. Took a week, but it came out great, and I was happy to do it.
I love how your whole family gets involved also, which really they all learn from it as well.
Yeah, trying to teach my kids a little bit how to paint.
Or your wife as well.
She knew a lot even before me.
Right.
So she was helping me like learn as well.
Right. Okay. So then you went on to sell that property.
Yes.
So I guess let's dive into the numbers there also. We might as well, just to talk about appreciation.
Yeah. So we sold 3 years later, and it kind of worked out really well. Because we were at that point looking to move more into the suburbs,
right,
and get a single family home because our kids were now even older, and we wanted to get a dog, so we needed more space. We wanted a little bit more privacy and like a bigger yard. So we ended up settling on a place in Morristown, and
the first one you saw there.
The first, yeah. Literally, we bought the first place we saw in Morristown because by then I had experience as an agent.
Sure.
We had experience buying properties together. We knew what we were looking for, and we knew what we were not looking for. So when that particular house hit, we kind of went really aggressively after it.
Yep.
And it helped that I was a realtor because I was able to basically form establish good rapport with the listing agent.
Sure.
And really, even though we were not the highest bid,
right,
we were the second best. The highest bid flaked out 2 days later. She called me because I said, if anything changes, please call me right away. And she did, and we ended up closing on the house. So we've been there about 2 years now. So the Bayonne worked out really well. We, in the real estate industry, the value add, we added a lot of value.
Sure.
Or sweat equity is another term. So because we finished the basement, we did a lot of work there ourselves, except we had a licensed plumber and a licensed electrician do that stuff.
So how much, including materials or whatever, how much do you think you spent on it?
I think we ended up spending, we did renovate, upstairs we had to put in a kitchen because it was used as a single family, even though it was a zone 2 family. So I think we spent like $100K all in.
Okay.
Like all in, including the basement and the renovations. So over the course of, the 3 years, we spent like $100K on it. And we ended up selling for, I believe, what was it, $690, $695 3 years later. So we bought for like $485, we sold for like $690.
So additional $100K.
So we made like $100K, obviously before tax implications or anything like that. But after 3 years, we were very happy with it.
Oh, yeah.
Very happy with it. And
you essentially lived there for free when you factor it all in, right?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. I mean, we had the couple of thousand out of pocket. But if over 3 years, right? The gains we made, we basically gained valuable experience and essentially ended up living for free for 3 years if you count the equity gains.
Yep.
But I think even putting aside the fact that we made some money on it,
sure,
the experience was priceless because we were landlords while living on the property. So we learned about maintaining the property, managing the tenant relationship, addressing issues like minor maintenance things or the leak here or something broke, whatever. We learned about what it takes to house hack, the numbers that are involved, right? What adds value, what kind of renovations we should focus on for future properties. And so for me, alone, even if we had not made money on the sale, I would have been happy just from all the things we learned.
All the experience, yeah, sure.
Because it made us smarter. Better.
And along the way, you've also purchased other properties.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah. So we ended up, we were kind of lucky, and timing worked out. There was an off-market opportunity in Bayonne. Actually, you were involved with that as well.
Sure.
You mentioned that you were going to be in Bayonne the following day. This is over 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago, and I said, do you have a listing coming up? And you said, well, I'm looking at 2 old properties. It might be an estate sale I have coming up soon. I said, can I take a look? Because we were still living in Bayonne, right? And I went to take a look, and they looked like, really crappy old houses.
Yeah.
They just happened to be, there's a driveway in between and 2 houses on either side. And I said, this looks interesting. Can I see it on the inside? And then the next day I got to tour the units and ran some numbers, looked at comps, and my wife and I talked. I said, listen, I think this is a unique opportunity. We should bid on it. And we put in a bid that I thought was kind of low as a package deal.
Right.
But I think this will be good for listeners that are trying to buy their first property. It wasn't just about the price. I made the terms very attractive.
Yeah.
Limiting the inspection, being flexible with closing, being flexible with inheriting certain tenants that have been there a long time. And I think the fact that I would be buying both properties together, I knew would appeal to the sellers, the executors of the estate. So to my surprise, they accepted, and we were able to close within a couple of months. So we went from having our house hack and having the place in the Catskills that we were Airbnb-ing to now suddenly purchasing 5 units in Bayonne off market.
A 3-family and a 2-family.
A 3-family and 2-family with a driveway in between. Off market in this competitive market, that's always a huge plus. But I want to make sure listeners are aware, we took some big risks with that. We were buying very old properties There was a scary looking garage thing in the back of the driveway that looked like a huge safety hazard. Some of the units looked to be, in pretty bad shape.
Oh yeah.
So it wasn't like, I think the point I want to make here is that there is inherent risk with most things in life that's worthwhile, right? Including real estate investing. Like, there are no guarantees you're going to make money. There are no guarantees it's property that's not going to give you major headaches or nightmares, right?
Sure, yeah.
Whenever you buy anything, there's always going to be risks involved. We knew we took some calculated risks, but we were comfortable with them because I knew that if we could buy it at this package price, that there's a lot of potential and the upside far outweighs any like downside risk. And so we've been extremely happy with that. And we've renovated, we've improved, and now we have 2 stable, fully rented rental properties that the only reason we have them is because I had my ears, perked up and I jumped on it.
Yeah.
And I think the people that are on the sidelines crunching numbers, you have to put away the spreadsheets, get out of the house, and actually start looking at properties and start bidding on properties, because
absolutely,
otherwise you're never going to get in the game. You're just going to be looking at numbers and listening to podcasts or reading books.
And like you mentioned, you shot your shot. I thought it was low also, and it turned out that your offer spoke to the seller because, like you said, make it easy to accept my offer. Make it easy to choose me, and that's exactly what you did. You gave great terms, where the price looked a little low, but you made it as easy as possible for the seller to work with you.
That's right.
And so it ended up, I was surprised too, and you ended up getting a very good deal at the time.
Yeah. And it hasn't been without headaches.
Sure. There's
I've dealt with tenant issues and tenant conflicts. We've dealt with certain fixes like leaks and other things that I've had to have, a trusted contractor address. But I think that's part of the game. Like, people are afraid of becoming landlords or afraid of becoming like property owners, but if you don't take some risks, like there's no reward, right? You're just gonna. I think it's well worth the risk, and I'm open to repeating this in the future. Like, for the right opportunity, I would jump on it in the future.
Now, before we pivot to more of the agent side of your business, on the investment side, where do you see yourself going from here?
I think about it a lot because, as agents, we're privy to certain opportunities, maybe some off-market stuff, or maybe somebody's thinking of selling. And it's always exciting because I'm always, my first reaction is like, wow, could I buy this?
Yeah.
So
we want to buy everything.
Right. So as agents, like, especially like investment-minded agents, it's always exciting. I think for me, it's a balance. I don't want to have too many units where it like sucks up a lot of my time and energy. So I think in the long run, it would be nice to scale up where one day, maybe in the future, we sell the two properties side by side that are 5 units. And then I do a 1031 exchange, which is basically a way to kick the can down the road in terms of paying capital gains taxes. So if you like, there are a lot of nuances which we won't get into in this conversation, but you could buy and sell around the same time, and there's a tax loophole where you can use an intermediary to do a 1031 exchange and avoid paying capital gains taxes at that time. So I wouldn't mind selling the 5 units one day, scaling that up into a much larger apartment building, and then just kind of sitting back, having a property manager take care of everything. And to me, that's the dream, right? Passive income from real estate without being actively involved.
Right.
But with 5 doors, it doesn't make sense for me to pay a property manager because I'm my own property manager.
Yeah.
Right. But if it was like 10 to 20, then at that point it would probably make sense.
Got it.
So that's probably the vision.
That's the vision.
Okay. A more passive way to be invested in real estate with more units.
Yep. Makes sense. Yeah. All right. So then switching gears a little bit to becoming an agent, tell us about when you got licensed and just go through your journey there.
Yeah. So this is kind of going to go rewind the clock a little bit. So after meeting you and looking at properties with you, I think I said, Ed, I'm looking for a career change.
Yeah.
Like, I got to get
burnt out at the time.
I was burnt out. I got to get out of the tour business. And you said, hey, I think you'd be great in real estate. You can come work with me. And I said, oh, that's a great idea. So I found a real estate school in Bayonne, and we were still living in Brooklyn. I was still running tours in New York City. And we were renovating the 2-family we just closed on. So it was crazy. Such a hectic time in my life. I would basically go to real estate classes, because back then it was in person, and sit there for 3 hours in class. I think it was twice a week, and then drive back to Brooklyn, and
Wow.
do
Yeah.
and then do the renovations. So juggling a lot of things. I ended up getting my license this summer of actually 5 years ago, summer of 2019. So we purchased our first primary residence, and I got my license within 2 months of each other. And then just kind of hustled and worked really hard and scaled up, and I've been doing it for almost 5 years now.
Yeah.
So that's been an awesome journey. So it's basically my third career, and I'm happy to say it's been the most rewarding career of the three. And I'm excited for everything the future brings. And it's a business where I want to be in it for the long run, and it's great for me because I was already an entrepreneur.
Sure.
So it was an easy transition. It's not like I was going from corporate to being a real estate agent. It's like I was going from being an entrepreneur in the tour business to now being an entrepreneur in the real estate business.
You were used to not having a steady paycheck and
Correct.
everything else.
I was
that
used
came
to being in
along with
control of my schedule, like both for better or worse, right?
Right.
I was used to having to be like self-motivated and driven because otherwise nothing gets done.
Yep.
And I was used to working on weekends and like having not a very structured like work week. So I think that made it easier for me than for some other people.
Now, who would you say is your typical client, or is there a typical client for you? Is there something you specialize in as an agent, or
When I started, so the first couple of years, I think I specialized in other people like me looking to get out of renting and trying to buy a multifamily to house hack.
Yeah.
So the majority of my clients were in that same situation. A lot of them were in their 20s or early 30s. But I think now I've really covered the full spectrum. I've helped people buy condos. I've helped people buy single-family homes in the suburbs. I've helped people sell different kinds of properties, from small condos to very large multifamilies.
Yep.
So I really, my client base is now pretty broad. I'm very happy working with first-time buyers, but I'm also very comfortable and happy working with investors looking to buy or sell their investment property. So I don't like to like pigeonhole myself into one particular niche, because then you kind of like if the market shifts and the niche disappears, then you have no business. So I would say I'm pretty comfortable in different market segments and with different kinds of clients.
You live in Morristown, so you live in Morris County.
That's right.
We're in our office here in Jersey City. We do a lot of business here. Is there a certain area you want to focus on or focus more on? Is there any areas where you would refer to a different agent?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Jersey's obviously a huge state, right?
Sure,
So I don't go to South Jersey, I don't go to the shore, and we have a great network of Compass agents we can refer people to. I'm pretty comfortable in North Jersey as a region, so I'm very happy to work with people in Hudson County, Bergen County, where I've done a lot of business. Obviously Morris County, which is my home base. So I've helped people in different parts of Morris County. But Union and Essex and everything in between, I've been active in. I think it's like 30 towns now where I've closed deals over the last 5 years. So to me, as long as it's within 45 minutes to an hour, I'm comfortable with. And if it's something I'm not comfortable with or have no familiarity with, I'll be completely honest and transparent with the potential buyer, and I'll say, listen, there's a great agent I can refer you to,
Sure.
so-and-so, and that person specializes in that particular area. So I think it's kind of a balancing act, and really depends.
Great. Well, look, in closing, I think I just want to say Max brings a very unique perspective to being an agent. He's somebody who is an entrepreneur. He's somebody who lived in the city and moved to New Jersey, so he went through emotions of that. He's somebody who is an investor, somebody who is, what I say, a contractor. He's done a lot of work himself. So he comes into an appointment with you with an eye for all these different things, and is very good at pointing out things that you may not see as a first-time home buyer, or sometimes even an experienced buyer. So that's a little bit more about Max Vishnev. Thanks very much for sitting down for this interview, and I hope you all got something out of it. And if anybody wants to reach you, what's the best way, Max?
You can call or text me at 718-306-2687. You can find me on Instagram as well at max.vishnev, or you can email me at max.vishnev@compass.com. Ed, thanks for chatting with me. This has been great.
My pleasure, man.